Aloha no. Do you know how they say here today, gone to Maui? You see behind me the beautiful view of Haleakala, where something exciting is taking place. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute, and I welcome you today to Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. My guest today is Robb Finberg, the president of a brand new project called the Aloha Heritage Center, which will prove to be one of Hawaii's most cherished visitor centers anywhere, and one that brings together both the rich heritage of Hawaii's past and a vision for the future. I'm going to let him talk a little bit about that. He's here today with me from the island of Maui. Robb, aloha to you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for letting me be here.
Well, it's always so good to be with you. The
Likewise.
Aloha Heritage Center. We're looking at beautiful views of Haleakala right now. This is where this center is going to be built.
Yes, we've procured land, about 8 acres of commercial property right on the slopes of Haleakala at about 1,900 feet elevation above sea level. Beautiful, cool, breezy Pukalani.
How about that? Now, the Aloha Heritage Center will tell the story of faith in the building of the Hawaiian kingdom, the monarchy and the people, particularly in the 19th century.
It's a fascinating story. It's unparalleled in the annals of Christianity or faith-based effect on a society. But you know, and we all know, the missionaries came here in 1820, but there were changes, spiritual changes, that were enacted actually before the missionaries came and went through their visit here, and their 12 missionary companies that came that changed Hawaii and impacted the world.
How about that? Now, this Heritage and Visitor Center is not actually a religious organization. It's something that's being offered for everybody from across the world, of all backgrounds and all faiths, to understand the history of Hawaii.
Absolutely. You know and I know that you cannot separate Hawaii from the word aloha.
All right.
How did Hawaii become the land of aloha? And why has it been such a fascinating place to so many people of all different cultures? And we talk about its background. No, it's not primarily religious. In fact, we have tried to separate that, but at the same time be faithful to the lives and the biographies of the people that were active in the 19th century.
So there's a story. In fact, there are many stories
There's
that
many
need to
stories.
be told.
Fascinating
Well, let's
stories.
talk a little bit about the setting. You
Okay.
say it's in beautiful Pukalani, in the site of Haleakala, on about 8 to 9 acres, and the road that leads actually to the Haleakala summit. How many visitors come along that road throughout the year?
Well, the reports are that Haleakala National Park receives 1,300,000 visitors annually.
Incredible.
Now, that's, well, I live up near there, and I am unaware that there's that much traffic. But of course, the tour buses go up, and tourists visit that site. It's a favorite site, and it's not easy to get to. We're talking 30 miles up up a tortuous road all the way to the top. But people do it because it's a fascinating site. So they're passing our property on the way.
So as a visitor center, it's well positioned. And of course, you'll probably have other attractions to bring those buses in, like very state-of-the-art and clean restrooms, a restaurant, a bookshop, and so forth.
Absolutely. Anybody that's been up to the crater, the first thing on their mind is coming down to where it's a little bit warmer and where the restrooms are a little bit more accommodating. So yes, we'll have that. We'll have
sure. Now, I've had the privilege of going through the virtual presentation of what you have planned, and I have to tell you this. At first I thought, oh, Robb is going to show me a museum with paintings and pictures and so forth. But when I went through that virtual tour that your designers have put together, I was just stunned. This is state of the art. We don't have anything like this in Hawaii. In fact, the closest thing I could think of was Epcot Center of Disney and so forth. So tell us a little bit about the caliber of the design, the state-of-the-art nature of the displays.
Well, we live in the 21st century, and yet we're building museums in many places that are like 16th century, where people read and they walk through artifacts. First of all, we love the Bishop Museum, and we have no desire to compete with them. They collect artifacts and documents that are of great value to the academic community. We, living in the 21st century, have opportunity for interactive displays, captivating experiences for children, teenagers, adults. I know when I was at school and we had a field trip, no one was excited about going to a museum. But we want to put together an array of displays that are interesting to people from 40 years old down to 4 years old. Or,
Yes, right. Some of the high tech is just incredible. You showed me a simulation of one of the main displays of Queen Kaahumanu, for which you have had a live, large, statuesque actress actually perform her role, a native Hawaiian speaker, in which she speaks in Hawaiian as a hologram. I just get goosebumps thinking about this. It's a majestic, incredible display in which one actually can feel the very presence of Liliuokalani.
or Kaahumanu.
It's Kaahumanu.
Kaahumanu.
Yes.
Yeah, the hologram idea came to me early on in this project, about 6 years ago, because first of all, we live in an era where you can bring to life animation, not only two-dimensionally, but three-dimensionally.
Incredible.
And then we also live at a time when you can take any spoken language and do an instantaneous translation so that that language can be understood by people all over the world. So we know Hawaii attracts people from Asia, attracts people from Europe, and so forth. And we have the ability, why not use it? So that Queen Kaahumanu can speak her native language. And by the way, we have the words that she spoke recorded, her letters and correspondence and testimony of her life and her message. So we don't have to fabricate anything. And then she can speak in Hawaiian, and it can get an instantaneous translation for our Japanese visitors or our Chinese visitors or any European language, and it can be instantly translated. Why? How can you do that? Well, smart devices or some type of audio equipment. And why not have the Hawaiian speaking Hawaiian in this visitor center?
So this is only one of how many displays?
We have plans for 47 exhibits, but that may not, we may not have room for it.
All right.
The mayor of Maui has said to me on more than one occasion that we're building the center too small. And that's easy to say. What we need to do is to raise adequate money to do all that we want to do.
Now, your design work is being done by some very renowned specialists. Tell us a little bit about them and what kind of projects they have actually completed across the world.
We have two of the world's finest, and I say that not because they're connected with us. They're not. They've done work for the Liliuokalani Foundation. They've done work for Grand Teton National Park, done work for Stone Mountain in Atlanta, Georgia, for the South Korean government, for the Republic of China, for Disney. They've done Caesar's Palace. They've done these two that I have in mind, and I haven't had a chance to talk with them about giving details of their backgrounds on the air, but I want to say that these are the best of the best.
That's incredible.
And one of them happens to be a resident in Hawaii and who has long desired to do something to honor the Hawaiian people. So these people will be working on on these exhibits to make them, first of all, respectful of the host culture. They will honor these people, and they will be faithful to holding to the values that we have of fidelity of these people's message.
Well, that's an incredible thing. I know that we have much heritage here in the state of Hawaii. We have stories that need to be told and are being told beautifully through many, many means. As you mentioned, there's a lot of credit that goes to Bishop Museum. But what you're talking about here is a level of interactive display that is state-of-the-art that doesn't exist anywhere in the state of Hawaii at this time.
Not that I'm aware of. I dragged my family all around Europe and not all around Europe, but a number of visitor centers. I wanted to see what was out there. I'm always interested in knowing what's available in making education fascinating and engaging. Always was interested in that because I felt that school missed it for me. We had one method of presenting information that just never attracted my attention. But we have so much more available, and why not take advantage of it? So we will look for the ideas and the stimulation. Of course, our designers are the best. I defer to them in whatever they design. But we expect that we can have the most captivating, interesting, educational displays about the lives of the people.
Now, we have many cultural sites that exist, many displays and so forth. And you're not trying to be a comprehensive cultural display. You're not trying to be entertainment per se, but you're trying to focus on a singular story of how faith actually built the Hawaiian kingdom and the monarchy in the 19th century, and how in the present we all benefit from that.
Yes, it's a fascinating history that I personally was unacquainted with, although I've lived most of my life in Hawaii. But cultural is a word you used. I think that that the cultural heritage needs to be preserved by someone, and that's not what we're doing. We're doing the heritage. We're doing verifiable history of the 19th century. We're taking the personalities who have left us record of their lives and their wishes, their legacy, and we are trying to bring it to life. So we're not a cultural center, we're a heritage center, and we want to record the legacies.
When you say you're not cultural, but your heritage, the two obviously overlap.
Of course.
But the distinction you're bringing out, is that a distinction of the telling of history in terms of the lives of the individuals and their actions that contributed to this faith heritage for Hawaii?
Yes, it is. And you can see the faith in the way these people live their lives. If I can, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
Okay. The priestess, Kapiolani, who was the namesake for Queen Kapiolani, lived on the Big Island. And she came to faith in Christianity and Jesus Christ. And she wanted to break up the old system of the worship of Pele, for instance. So the story, which has been told and retold many times, was that she ascended Kilauea mountain and came to the crater and defied Pele by picking the sacred berries, which were kapu, and threw them into the volcano, and in effect said, Pele, come and get me. Well, this, of course, parallels a biblical account of the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. But she defied Pele, and Pele, of course, did not react at that, and she came down the mountain, arduous trip, barefoot, across miles and miles of this lava rock, and she declared that Pele was dead and of no effect and was not to be feared. Now, ascending the mountain before she went to the crater were thousands of people's eyes on her, and some warned her, be careful, this could end your life. But she was intrepid, ascended the mountain, defied Pele, and Alfred Lord Tennyson heard about it, poet laureate of England, and wrote the story of priestess Kapiolani and the sacred berries in the Kilauea. Quite a poem and quite a tribute. Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that your telling of the story of in the Aloha Heritage Center actually doesn't begin with Western contact.
No.
Or the big bringing of Christianity from outside of Hawaii. It actually begins with the Hawaiians themselves.
Yes.
and their own relationship to the traditional religion. You mentioned Kapiolani, but before that, you also have, along with her, a contemporary, a priest named Heva, who on his own initiative with other Hawaiians began to rethink some of their religious practices.
He did, and he was a remarkable person from beginning to end, as far as I'm concerned. And of course, there was no written history at that time because there was no written Hawaiian, but he prophesied, as I understand it, this is the oral history, that he prophesied that one day there was going to be a manifestation of God in Hawaii. In fact, he pinpointed the site where that was going to happen. That was on the shores on the Big Island, and he said, right here, the Lord will manifest himself, and God Almighty. And sure enough, that happened to be in the very site that the missionaries offloaded off the Thaddeus, and they came on shore. It's called the Plymouth Rock by some people of the Hawaiian Islands. And they brought a gift of a bound Bible, and they said, we've come to bring the Word of God here. And many people recognized the connection between Heva's prophecy and the arrival of this small company of people that came, 4 Hawaiians that came to the islands, and other New Englanders, and they came, and the rest, as we say, is history. But Heva became a follower of Jesus Christ. He wrote an Oli to Jesus, and he became a member of the church up in Haleiwa here on this island. So a remarkable history. And
well, this is interesting. And when we come back from a brief break, what I want to ask you about is a little bit of the timing. Often people think that it was the bringing in of the Christian tradition that resulted in the change of the Hawaiian religion. But you have some things to tell us about Heva that the Aloha Heritage Center will bring to light.
Focus on, yeah.
And we will be talking again in just a moment with Robb Finberg, president of the Aloha Heritage Center, a tremendous project being built on the island of Maui to provide for visitors and locals alike a telling of the history that faith has played in the building of the Kingdom of Hawaii and the monarchy. I'm Keli'i Akina, and you're watching E Hana Kākou. We'll be right back after this short break.
Okay, I'm Jay Fidel, that's Ray Starling. We co-host a show called Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. It's really interesting. You know, Ray has a way of unzipping these guys. He asks them these questions, and all this stuff tumbles out, and we find out stuff we would never know about without Ray's questions. Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome, Jay. I'm very pleased to be your Ed McMahon every Wednesday at 4 o'clock here on the internet. So you can join us and see what's happening in the energy world, and there is a lot going on. So join us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, come around, be energized right here on ThinkTech. Aloha.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Welcome back to E Hana Kākou. We're here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute, where we say E Hana Kākou. What does E Hana Kākou mean? Well, it sounds very much like a venerable Hawaiian saying, E Pule Kākou, which is let's pray together. At the Grassroots Institute, we like to say E Hana Kākou, which means let's work together. Think of the terrible alternative, not working together. But we invite people to work together for a better economy, a better government, a better society. The First Amendment is one of the most important institutions assuring freedom of thought and conscience in the United States of America and in Hawaii. According to the First Amendment, the government cannot establish any religion, nor can it hinder the free exercise thereof. As a result of the First Amendment, we today have a nation in which people are free to practice the religious tradition of their choice. And here, with the diversity that we have in our nation and in the state of Hawaii, it's good once in a while to reflect upon the benefits we've had from religious traditions, particularly here in the state of Hawaii, Christianity, which played a very big role in the development of the Kingdom of Hawaii and the monarchy. And this is a role that we can appreciate regardless of anyone's current religious tradition, whether there is a religion or not for an individual. We are looking today at some of that history, and there's probably going to be a few better places than the Aloha Heritage Center on the island of Maui, now under development near Haleakala, where this story is being told, where the richness of this story that has been cherished so much by all the people here in the state of Hawaii comes to life, so to speak. And so I continue my conversation with Robb Finberg, president of the Aloha Heritage Center. Just such a fascinating place. Before we go on, why don't you show the camera the copy of the Maui News? It's starting to capture the attention of the public.
Which
There we
camera?
go.
Okay. This was covered in the Maui News back this summer, and we had the opportunity to tell our story. The newspaper actually came to us, which we were pleased to see, and they reported it, and they did an excellent job. Maui News is a great paper, so
It is.
we're happy to be there.
We look forward to more reports in the Maui News.
Yes,
Now, one of the roles that the Aloha Heritage Center will play is to dispel some misconceptions about the role religion has played in Hawaii. And one of the common misconceptions is that Christianity came in and changed the Hawaiian religious system and overrode it. But as we look historically, there were some amazing events that happened before Christianity reached the islands, and you were talking a little bit about them. We referred to a priest at the time in the early 19th century, Heva, who had actually played a significant role, didn't he,
Yes, he
in
did.
dismantling the Hawaiians' own religious traditions prior to the arrival of the Christian missionaries.
That was the thing, and I wasn't really trying to dispel myths. I myself, as I got better educated, realized that I was laboring under some misapprehensions. So it was really for my own personal information that I started delving a little bit deeper. But what you pointed out is accurate. The overthrow of the Kapu system is universally acknowledged to have happened in 1819 That was the year prior to the arrival of the missionaries.
And wasn't that the year of the death of King Kamehameha the First?
No, he had,
the year
yes,
before.
actually it was. He had died, and there was some changes. Kaahumanu, his favorite wife, had passed on the information that she said her husband, Kamehameha the Great, wanted her to be the Kuhina Nui, and that she was going to be kind of the mentor for the heir to the throne, Liliuokalani. So she took her responsibility very seriously. She's a very capable woman. And during that time of this transition, when Liliuokalani was coming in, Queen Kaahumanu, Kapiolani, actually Liliuokalani's mother, and the highest ranking Li'i, and Heva the priest, and Boki, the governor of Oahu, all conferred. And the idea was brought up actually by Kapiolani, if our historian sources are reliable. Then they said, we want to end this kapu system.
Well, let me back up and go over the cast of characters first, and then let you
Sure.
continue to tell the story, because this is fascinating. There was King Kamehameha the Great, who died in about 1819, and he had an heir, Kamehameha II, or Liliuokalani. Now, Liliuokalani had a mother, Kapiolani, and the wife of the queen, the regent really, Kaahumanu, in his life, two strong ladies in his
Yes.
life. And there was the priest Heva and the governor Boki. Okay, these are the players. And you're saying that long before there was the contact with any Christianity from the West, these individuals, as leaders of the people, met together and brought about something.
Yes, there was a desire for change among these personalities and others, evidently. It was not limited to those main, but those were the most influential, and perhaps they were the key power holders at that time.
Now, women did not come together with the men during the mealtime and make
No.
decisions and so forth. That was not an allowed practice under the tradition. So
That's what I understand.
there was a symbolic act, wasn't there, that took place amongst them?
Yes, during that time of people, after they had conferred and decided to end it, the women, notably Kaahumanu, sat with Liliuokalani, the then heir to the throne and the king, in fact, and she ate. She broke the kapu by eating with male and female, the mixing of the sexes. And that, of course, I'm sure brought gasps from some of the observers, but she held fast. She was a very resolute person. And she decided we were not going, during her reign or influence of the reign, she was not going to have the kapu system in force. Now, I can't say that there was absolutely no Christian influence because, frankly, I don't know. It was 40 years since Captain Cook, before the missionaries arrived, more than 40 years. So during that time, there may have been Christian believers that had come to the islands and maybe had some impact. Undoubtedly, there were Westerners that came and thought nothing about sitting down with members of the female sex and eating. So I think that these very astute people observed that didn't end the world, and they probably thought, well, these Westerners are challenging us to review some of our beliefs.
Sure.
But it was 1819 when they formally put an end to it, and it was not just a passive, let's make a resolution. Heva had timed the announcement and the sitting down, the kapu, with the destruction of a heiau and with the burning of idols. And so this was all quite a dramatic demonstration, evidently, that this era of the kapu system had come to an end.
So the end of the kapu system, the burning of the heiau, the destruction you described, were not brought by Christian missionaries, for they
No.
hadn't even arrived.
They had not
So
yet
the
come to the
Michener
end.
story is a little bit off in terms of chronology, the one that we know through entertainment, the book and the film Hawaii, because there, where a lot of people learn their history, the Christians came in, and then they were the ones who called for the end of the kapu system and the burning of the religious
Idols.
religious symbols and so forth. But you're saying that it was these Hawaiian leaders who actually ended that. And so when that happened, what was in the land? What held the people together as a religious tradition, or was there a void at this point?
Well, I can tell you that in my life, religion had no role for 24 years, and I didn't miss it. So I'm not sure that you need a religion to hold a society together. But they, of course, had peace. I mean, this cannot be overemphasized. Kamehameha had united the islands, and these islands had been disrupted by warfare and different factions for as long as there's an oral history. So the coming of the peace and the stability of a government, and he was a genius in my estimation, Kamehameha, both militarily and a tactician and a strategist, but also diplomatically. And when he finally made the treaty with Kauai and decided to bring a unification across the entire kingdom, this set up a momentum, I believe, that the people wanted to preserve it. I mean, the warfare came to an end. How good is that? And then the benefits that come from what I call the Pax Kamehameha. So this was absolutely essential to the success of literacy, for instance. Imagine if there were a few missionaries that came to one island that was at war with the rest of the islands, and they said, we wanted to bring literacy. Well, it would have never had much of an influence at the rival tribal territories, but rather they brought it to a kingdom, a united kingdom.
So we have this kingdom, which now has a break with its traditional religious past, and this is in 1819. Tell me what happens in 1820 now with the Queen Kaahumanu is in effect the regent. She's ruling at this time. You've got Kapiolani, you have Liliuokalani, and so forth. What happens next? We have the arrival of the Christian missionaries with their Bible.
Christian missionaries come, Hiram Bingham, Asa Thurston, Lucy Goodall Thurston, some others that came. And these came in hopes of being received by the royalty. Now, they left New England. As far as they knew, the kapu system was still in effect. And they came all the way around South America, a journey of 5.5 months. When they arrived, they were already of the mentality that if they were not welcome, they were not going to get even off the ship. They were just going to return right back to New England. Well, as history often is, it's a collage of events and personalities that bring about the end result. John Young was a trusted advisor to Liliuokalani, had been to Kamehameha. And so he was asked, you're a Westerner, what do you think about these missionaries? And evidently he said, well, I don't think they'll do any harm. And they saw it, and they were given, the missionaries were given a probationary period. They were given some land, which is near Kauai Church, and they were allowed to settle there on a probationary period. And during that time, they came with an attitude of serving. And so they were at the behest of the royalty, they were servants. So if they wanted clothing or samples or whatever they wanted to learn or know, they were prepared to do whatever's necessary to endear themselves to the people. Well, during that time, because there was peace in the land and they were venturing out to different islands, they had touched on the Big Island, of course, and now they're in Honolulu and they're meeting with the royalty and the right representatives. They had a message, and it wasn't instantaneously embraced. It never is, or seldom is. They proved themselves as people of integrity, and I remember reading one historical account that the people of the islands admired the way the husbands loved their wives and loved their children.
So there was a message, a lifestyle that was being brought in, but the Hawaiians played a role in this. Queen Kaahumanu at that time played a role. Does the Aloha Heritage Center have a display planned to show her role in this?
She is a key force. Her name later in her life became Kaahumanu Ho. I was reading a history recently published about the difference between her personality when the missionaries met her and how she was known among her subjects to the Kaahumanu Ho, the other Kaahumanu, who eventually shone through, a kind, generous, humble person. And I've read her letters, translations of her letters, and they are remarkable. considering this is a person who literally had power of life and death over her subjects, how genuinely loving she was and how willing she was to serve and to do whatever she could for the betterment of our society and our subjects. So she is a key person. Her influence cannot be overstated in the new direction that the kingdom had gone.
So what did she do?
Well, she was, first of all, she became a Christian about 1829 or so. And because she was such a stern and, well, we'll just leave it at that, a stern person, that she was not necessarily esteemed as a good example of what a Christian monarch could be. So they would not allow her to be a member of Kauai Church, although she made application. They said, we want to watch you to see if the character that you claim is now under the lordship of your God is going to be influenced by this. And as they observed her, they came to the conclusion she had a genuine conversion.
Well, your displays will show the role that she played, of course, in that. And we're going to come back after a short break. And in our final segment, I'd like to hear a little bit more about Kaahumanu and some other key people whose displays are going to be at the Aloha Heritage Center. You're watching Ehana Kako, which is here every week on ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Don't go away, and we'll be right back with Robb Finberg of the Aloha Heritage Center.
Hi, I'm your host on ThinkTech Asia, Bill Sharp. I look forward to you joining us each Monday between 4 and 5 o'clock when we film right here in our studio in downtown Honolulu. The show, ThinkTech Asia, focuses on contemporary events in Asia, and by Asia we mean anything from Hawaii, south to Australia and New Zealand, west to Pakistan, and as far north as the Russian Far East. Clearly, this is one of the most economically dynamic centers of the world, and we bring you up to date on what's going on in a whole host of countries in this very vital region. We look forward to seeing you.
For her.
Aloha.
That's where we left off.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako, here every week on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. My hat goes off to Jay Fidel, producer of ThinkTech Hawaii, and all the terrific staff and volunteers who make this network work. We're on air almost 24 hours, but we produce about 35 hours of original content from Honolulu. You can get that at thinktechhawaii.com. Now, back to Robb Finberg, a very fascinating story about the development of the Aloha Heritage Center in Maui. Robb, we've been talking about some of the origins of faith for the monarchy and the new kingdom of Hawaii in the 19th century. You talked about the role of Queen Kaahumanu and Liliuokalani, the prince at that time, who were responsible for breaking with the past, and then Christianity came in, which is the opposite of what a lot of people think.
It's the opposite of what I used to think, but the historical record separates them from 1819, when the end of the Kapu system came, and the 1820, when the missionaries arrived.
Well, it seems to be a timely fit at the very least. But responsible for this is a man whose life is going to be commemorated in another one of your displays, Henry Opukahaia, or as they would have written, Obukaya at the time.
Obukaya, right.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, Henry Obukaya was a person that Mark Twain had great admiration for. Mark Twain writes that he had read the story of Henry Obukaya and was brought to tears in a Sunday school lesson. His memoirs were published and became a bestseller in New England, certainly among the Christian community. But Henry was a remarkable young man, left the islands when he was 15.
In fact, your display is going to show how he left as a stowaway on a ship and ended up in the Atlantic and was put off not very far from a little seminary called Yale College.
That's right, that's right. And Henry, the story goes that Henry was crying on the steps of this Yale College saying, I want to learn, but no one will teach me. And he became friends with Edwin Dwight, and Timothy Dwight, the president of Yale University, took him in, and they started to educate this young Polynesian, and he took off. He became a believer in Jesus Christ, and that was significant to him. It was important back then at Yale University because it was a seminary, and they took upon themselves Henry's education. Well, Mark Twain remarked after meeting Henry personally that this young man would have risen to the top in any society because of his intellect. And this young man started his education, of course had to learn English, Beyond that, he was interested in studying the scripture, so he learned Latin, Greek, Hebrew. He was fascinated with Hebrew because it was so similar in syntax to his own language, Hawaiian, that he started to translate the Bible, Genesis, of course, into Hawaiian, but he didn't do it from English. He did it from Hebrew, which he felt more comfortable with.
Now, Henry Opokaia had a vision, a passion, but he didn't live to be part of it himself. What was that vision? And how did his classmates, really, or his colleagues respond to it in New England?
Well, he had left the islands under great sorrow. His mother and his father were killed during a warfare with a neighboring tribe, and he was fleeing the scene with his little brother on his back, shoulders, I think 2 years old or so. And as they're fleeing the scene, a spear was thrown, impaled his brother. His brother died. So in that brief period of time, within hours, he lost his mother, his father, and his brother. He was filled with sorrow. And he, at that time, wanted to leave the islands without any intention of returning. And Captain Bricknell on board the ship took him in and said, yes, we'd be happy to have another hand on their ship. And he worked his way as they went sealing around the Pacific, China, and so forth, wound up in New England. And by the way, I might mention there's a great new biography written by Christopher Cook, one of the most definitive biographies of Henry Opokaia ever attempted.
Sure. Just
became available on Amazon, a little commercial about it, because I found it fascinating, but thoroughly researched and an excellent account of Henry's life. Well, Henry went back to New England, became a Christian himself, and then he said the answer to home, to the warfare and the strife that, brought such tragedy to me, would be if people could love one another. And this gospel has that kind of a message. So he started pleading with people to send the gospel to the Hawaiian Islands. Now, he had left 1810 or so, and he desired and purposed that he would do whatever he could do, anything humanly possible, asking for God's blessing that they could bring the message of Jesus' love and forgiveness back to the islands. Well, as Providence would have it, he met Samuel Mills, who was the founder of the Foreign Missions Program, and he persuaded him to consider the Sandwich Islands. Now, that's amazing that they should even meet, but that Samuel Mills, who had his sights on Africa and India and China, could be persuaded by the passion of this young Hawaiian. Said, no, send the gospel to the Sandwich Islands.
Now, the tragedy, of course, is that he dies before he's able to,
never fulfill it,
be part of this mission. But as a result, the mission goes forward with young men and women of New England who love Henry, who've heard his passionate story, get on a ship so that they spend the rest of their lives away from their families. And the name of that ship, of course,
is the Thaddeus.
And that brings us back full circle to what happened in
1820.
ultimately 1820. They arrive on the shores of Hawaii. Now, fast forwarding ahead a little bit.
Sure. After
Kaahumanu herself gives them a warm reception, tests them out, sets them up, Christianity begins to play a significant role in the kingdom.
The most significant role, obviously, is literacy.
Okay, because the Bible had to be translated, but that was the process by which Hawaiians got a written language.
They got a written language. Hiram Bingham said, we're going to put this language. So, of course, they had to study it, all the phonetics and everything. He could take the alphabet that you and I are familiar with, reduce it to 12 letters, and start the writing of the Hawaiian language. And so he did this with the idea in mind that they would eventually have a Bible in their own language.
And that literacy rate just soared up until the end of the 19th century.
Unbelievable. By all reports, literacy was over 90% by the 1840s.
That's incredible.
We don't have 90% literacy,
No.
just for those that are watching. We think that America is sophisticated and well-to-do, but we are not getting over 90% literacy in the United States of America.
In addition to bringing literacy, this new faith brought medicine. I think that you're going to have a display of a doctor, a Dr. Baldwin, in fact,
Yes.
and the role that medicine brought to the Hawaiian people.
I think we all know that the history of Hawaii has a very painful realization that when the West came in contact, now we're talking about Captain Cook, not the missionaries, but when the West came in contact with the islands, they brought diseases. And it was an incredibly short period of time before the population was being decimated by these diseases. In addition to the fatal diseases, there were venereal diseases and other things that were brought by these Western contact. Now, this was killing not 10% or 15% of the population. It was killing half to 2/3 of the population. Well, the missionaries came. They didn't come just as preachers and Bible translators. They came as tradesmen, they came as farmers, and they came as physicians. And Dr. Baldwin came to bring medicine. In fact, he left Harvard Medical School before his official commissioning as a doctor. And he said, no, I feel a call of God to go to the Hawaiian Islands. And through his wisdom, he taught Hawaiians how to vaccinate and how to immunize themselves. So when the plague, for instance, the smallpox came in the 1850s, which they expected to wipe out, again, tens of thousands of Hawaiians, Dr. Baldwin had effectively stopped the plagues. And he instituted quarantines and all kinds of health practices and sanitation that saved a life. I read one historian that said Dr. Baldwin was likely responsible for the preservation of Hawaiians as a race.
So we have education, we have literacy, we have medicine and health as a result of these Christian missionaries. We've only got a couple minutes more, but there's an important display at the Aloha Heritage Center underway that shows how government and civil rights were influenced. In 1840, Kamehameha III then established a constitution for the Hawaiian people.
Right.
And that was also highly influenced by this Christian tradition.
It was remarkable. The Constitution of 1840 says that no law shall be enacted which is at variance with God's law or the spirit of his law. And this is an amazing statement. Now, here are Hawaiians. Some had the highest ranking of ali'i and enjoyed all the privileges. And yet Kamehameha III was willing to put equal rights before all men. And this is a significant and an amazing statement considering where they came from.
That's right.
So they opened it up. The preamble to their constitution opens with scripture. It says, God hath made of one blood all nations and all men on the earth to dwell in blessedness and unity.
And this is remarkable because this is prior to the Civil War in the United States. And
Yes,
as a result, we didn't bifurcate society between black and white and have a slave class here in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Now, we've only got a minute or two left, and certainly this won't do justice to talk about a display that you have of Queen Liliuokalani. Tell us what kind of story the Aloha Heritage Center is going to show about her and her faith.
Well, Queen Liliuokalani devoted her life to the church and her service in the church. Now, I don't know if Queen Elizabeth is teaching Sunday school, but Queen Liliuokalani did. And she was a great songwriter, loved music. Her story, Hawaii Story, that she authored, is an eloquent and praiseworthy contribution to understanding history in that era. And I want to say that Queen Liliuokalani was a remarkable woman for her faith, and she resented those that, of course, that came against her in her role as queen, but she never did what a lot of people do when they go into crisis. She never divorced her faith from her life. And she lived her faith and allegiance to her Lord and her Savior, and she carried that as her legacy. And then, of course, through her life, she carried one of life's most important messages, a message of forgiveness.
Well, that's something, and I know you're going to have music at the center as well.
You cannot have Hawaii represented
right.
in any way without music.
The Queen's Prayer, for example, in
Yes.
which she says, look not on the sins of these men who have done things to her, but forgive. And of course, Aloha Oi, perhaps one of the most well-known tunes from Hawaii across the world. How that queen infused both her Christian tradition and the Hawaiian tradition into a meaning of the word aloha. Rob, I want to wish you the best in this work.
Thank you so much.
I think it's good for Hawaii, good for the world, and good for our practice here of spreading aloha. Take care.
Thank you so much for being here.
My guest today, Robb Finberg, president of the Aloha Heritage Center, is leading a dynamic project that is underway in 9 acres on the road on the way to Haleakala now. You can get more information by visiting the website. What is the website?
AlohaHeritageCenter.com.
AlohaHeritageCenter.com. Until next time, I'm Keli'i Akina with the Grassroots Institute saying aloha from e hana kākou. We'll see you on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network next week.